Hey everybody, welcome to the WG's podcast. So this is special guest edition with Private Eye Russ, number 2. So after the good success of the previous one, we decided to go for another round. This time, hopefully the audio will be fine. I think that you have a mic, Private, right?
Well, I have another mic, but my son was supposed to set it up, and he's been out of town for the last couple of days, so I'm using a Bluetooth mic. So hopefully this will suffice. If it doesn't work out, then I'll record with you again, my friend. It's always a pleasure being here. Thank you for having me on once again, and thank you to your audience. I get to sit here and talk with the world famous French OG, which is always a pleasure. I had a bunch of fun last time, man.
Same thing. It was a fucking great podcast. So today's subject of the podcast is a bit different, right? The first time we were talking about the private investigator side of the business, right? But this area is, I would say, less well known. How so? It's less well known. It's Bell's Bondsman, right? Is that right? Did I pronounce
Yes.
it well?
Yep.
All right. So, and we're discussing a bit about with Russ. I mean, I watched that show called Sneaky Pete where you had like a family that were bailing out, people that would normally be in custody. And they were running that to basically make sure that they be attending trial on the day. So when you think about it, and you'll explain it, right? Imagine you're buying a bond. Imagine you're buying a bond, like a government bond, right? Or like, let's say a company bond. But instead of getting your usual treasury bond that is 10%, not 10%, that is 2 to 3%, or 4%, 5% in today's high interest rate, you do that with people. Right? So it's more likely that you're going to be dealing with high yield bonds, even on the government side, with like Argentinian bonds, or it could be even a corporate one where it's a junk bond because you don't know if they're going to make their credit payment. But the question is, when it comes to individuals, how does it work? And please, Russ, can you just explain a bit more than just what I told him from the finance side of things?
Sure thing. So, in pretty much the whole country, but specifically, I'll go with Florida because I'm a licensed bail bondsman in Florida. So, if someone gets arrested and a judge will give them bond, a grants bond. So, say the bond is, say, just to make it just an even number, $1,000. If they don't have the $1,000, they can come to me or another bondsman and say, "Hey, I need you to bond me out. This is the bond," and they pay 10%. So the bondsman gets paid 10%. And what you do is you sign a contract agreeing that you're going to show up in court on time. So the entity that underwrites the rest of the bond is the insurance companies. The insurance companies run the bond industry in this country. And so there are several insurance companies that underwrite bonds, and that's all they do. And obviously they make money doing it. Well, if you don't show up in court and I can't produce you within a certain amount of days, then I'm not just I don't just have to give back the 10% I got. I have to pay back 100% of the bond to the insurance company because the insurance company has to pay the county. And so the insurance company makes me pay the bond back to them because if I don't pay them back, then they will remove my ability to underwrite bonds and then I'm out of business. So that's why bail bondsmen go chase people down that skip. We call them skips. So if someone doesn't show up to court, we call them a skip, because they skip court. And so we have to track them down. And so what bondsmen will do is they'll pay me to track down and find their skips because I happen to be good at finding people from my private investigation side. And so when people sign a contract with a bail bondsman, you're not actually free when you get out. The bail bondsman owns you. And so for instance, if I'm monitoring your social media, which a lot of bail bondsmen do, which they should, and I see that you're planning on leaving the county, like you can't leave the county without my permission if I bonded you out. Certainly not leaving the country. And so one bail bondsman found that one of the people he bonded out was planning a trip to Puerto Rico and had not spoken to the bail bondsman. And so the bail bondsman, if they see something like that, they can revoke your bond and arrest you. So even though we're not law enforcement, we can actually put handcuffs on you. We can kick in a door if we know you're there. We can go get you wherever you are in the country. So the bondsman owns you.
Warrant.
No, the only warrant we need is that we have paper on them. So when you get bonded out, you're still in what's called a modified form of custody. So you're not actually free. So you don't have all of your rights. So I can invade your privacy. I can take away your freedom. And that's a very, very powerful thing to be able to do here with the Constitution the way it is. But your constitutional rights are somewhat suspended when you're out on bond. And so I think a lot of people don't read the contract because they're just happy to get out of jail. But if they violate the terms of their bond agreement, the bail bondsman can, and in most cases will, revoke their bond and just arrest them, just like that.
Okay. So let me get this right, right? So who pays you the 10%, right? Is that the insurance company paying you the 10%?
No,
Is that the county paying you the 10%? Is that no, it's the client paying the
the
10%.
individual who wants to get bonded out. Yeah. They're
Okay,
paying
fine.
they're
So
paying 10%.
technically yeah. So technically it's like they're putting a down payment. It's as if, yeah, they're putting the down payment for a mortgage, but they get once they come to court, technically it's as if they pay the mortgage
Yeah, it's
and you
kind
get
of
your 10%.
it's kind of like an insurance policy. You're signing an insurance policy for the state, ensuring that this person is going to show up on time. And so the bail bondsman, we can use whatever means at our disposal to recover somebody and bring them to jail.
And just so that I understand, right? So in terms of, you said like it's an industry that is owned by insurance companies. So technically every county has different type of insurers that are, specialized in bails bondsmen, right? But you are one, right? You're not an insurance company. You're just you're a private eye, right? And you were telling me earlier before the show that you could have like your mom and pop shop that actually could do this type of business. What I'm wondering is what leads people that are not necessarily, actuaries in terms of, security risk or flight risk go into that business. If you were to describe the landscape of the typical bail bondsman, what would it be?
They come from all walks of life, and it is a good long-term business to get into because there's always going to be someone being arrested for some reason or another, and
Mhm.
to be able to get out of jail and continue your life. So say right now, I know a guy. He's the son of a witness, a CI I use regularly. A CI is a confidential informant. She gives me a bunch of information. Well, I bonded her son out in exchange for information. This guy has been arrested just under 40 times, all for minor stuff. And the last 5 times he got arrested was for open container, just having a beer in his hand and drinking while he's out in the street. And so there are guys like that that get arrested over and over and over again. They get bonded out, they go to court, they get a slap on the wrist. But every time they do that, the bail bondsman gets paid. And so a lot of them have repeat customers. A lot of them have, clients that they bonded out dozens of times. And so the businesses, there are some bigger companies that have, guys that own multiple offices, but most of them, for the most part, are small, one person or family owned store or shop, or I guess you could call it an office. And they just, they'll bond out the same people typically over and over again. And they try to reduce their risk by bonding out people they know. And so
Mhm.
from the money side of things, I don't own a bail bonds company because I don't want to carry the risk constantly. And my primary business is the private investigation side. The bail bond side,
Mhm.
they'll call me, say, hey, look, I've got a skip I can't find. Can you find this person for me? And they'll pay me, they'll typically pay me 10% of the face of the bond, to go find the people, or more depending. So the reason I don't have one is because every time you bond somebody out, like I've got a buddy who I had to help him track down 12 different people. He got stuck. This was during the flight restrictions during COVID. He was in the Dominican Republic, but his business was being run by another individual he trusted. He was on vacation. Well, the guy, it turns out he had a drug issue, and he was writing every bond that walked in. He was writing every bond without any due diligence.
Mhm.
And so all these people skipped court. Everybody skipped court. And so when he came back, he was looking at a bill from the insurance company. They said, well, look, if you don't start tracking these people down, we're going to shut you down and remove your ability to write bonds, and you'll be out of business. And so we had to put our heads together, and we tracked down a bunch of these people. One of them, you'll probably like this. She was a career drug dealer, drug addict, and prostitute. So, and so she
Royal
was,
flush.
yeah, yeah. So she was really, really difficult to find. He said, look, we can't find her. I said, look, let me look at her charges. I looked at her charges, and I saw a lot of her charges were for prostitution. And so I said, okay. I said, I know how we'll find her. And he's like, how? I said, she's a drug addict. I said, so at some point when she needs money, she's going to put an ad in advertising her services on one of the escort sites. There's dozens of escort sites. They're not hosted here in the United States of America. They're hosted other places, but there are dozens of them. And so what I did was I started monitoring those sites, and lo and behold, an ad popped up with her in it. And so what we did was we bought a burner phone, a track phone, and we sent a request for services. So when she responded to the request for services, he showed up in a nondescript vehicle, and me and two other guys were on the next block. We parked a Suburban on the next block. We waited until he got the room number, and we converged. And when she opened the door, we arrested her. And so you
You
have to,
got served.
yeah, yeah. You have to be really creative, because people who are hiding know that the bondsmen are going to be looking for them, so they're actively hiding. So you have to find creative ways in a lot of certain instances to track them down and to bring them into custody. This lady, and we'll go into this more. Uh, we mentioned this a little bit before in some of our back and forth conversations before this, but the first thing a lot of women do when they get caught is to offer up their body in exchange for setting them free. This is what she did for a career. So obviously she said, "Hey, look, I'll do this for all of you." And we're like, nah, like it's like, no thanks, and but it's not just the career sex workers. It's ordinary, everyday women from all walks of life, to, from the girl next door to the trophy wife or the rich guy's wife. When people get caught, women will usually offer their bodies, and and
They're
and it,
cheap. They're
and,
cheap. I'll tell you.
and it never
Man,
fails. It never fails every single time.
if guys truly wanted honesty, they should validate hoes because they're honest. I'm
Well,
serious. Like,
you know what though? You know what you I mean, like, dude, that's a profound truth that I think most people don't understand. Look, at their nature, prostitutes, what I found is this, and I use them a lot for confidential informants, because they see everything. They know everybody.
well, that's for sure. They
They
share
see everything.
everything.
They do. Well, you know why? Because nobody's afraid to do anything in front of a sex worker. Nobody's afraid to do anything, and so they'll know everything. And so, but they are honest. They are honest, and they'll be very, very upfront with you. And the only people that are more honest than just regular sex workers are crackheads. Crackheads don't lie. They don't lie at all. I swear to God, I don't know if crack is like a truth serum, but they'll tell you. Well, I think it's more than that. You could probably give me your theory on this, but my theory is this: when a person is a crackhead, a verified crackhead, like they've been on the street, they've been at the absolute depth of humanity. Like it doesn't get any worse for their circumstances. And I think what happens is they don't have any shame about anything, because they've done everything to get crack. And so, but yeah, they're very, very honest. Average woman. When I'm doing some of these backgrounds on women, man, like I just did one very recently. And so it was a local guy who met a young lady, and I looked at her. First thing I looked at was her social media. And I was like, wait a second, this looks too clean. And she looked a little bit familiar to me, because I know a bunch of guys that own clubs and everything else. And so I took a screenshot and I sent it to one buddy of mine who owns a club. And he was like, "Oh, that's such and such." I was like, "Yeah, do you know her?" He was like, "Yeah, she was a pass around." And so a pass around is a girl that goes with the different you had different club promoters. And so what the club promoters do is they promote different nights at clubs, and they get a take of the alcohol and the door sales or whatever it is. So their job is to get people into the door. So they'll have a bunch of girls with them typically, because that's how you get guys. Guys spend the money when girls are there. And so she was one of this guy's groupies that would hang out with him and have sex with whoever offered her a little bit of cash. So she was a club pass around girl. But when you looked on her social media, like I swear to God, you saw pictures of her, wholesome pictures of her on farms, posing with farm animals and feeding ducks and things of that nature. I'm sitting there like, oh man. And so,
Nigga,
and
please.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, precisely. And I'm sitting there like, wait. And so I look further and further and further. And sometimes I'll go down a rabbit hole. And she had an OnlyFans with explicit content, with explicit
No, she was not
content.
just feeding her cats.
No,
She was
man.
feeding pussy, but not her cat. Yeah.
Yeah, and so she and I'm sitting there like, oh my gosh, man. And then I actually talked to 3 guys who paid her for oral. And so I'm sitting there, the guy she was trying to hook up with, clean cut guy, very plain background in the financial services industry, makes a lot of money, man. And so as I look back, she scrubbed her social media after she started getting to know the guy. That's when she scrubbed her social media. She eliminated friends, contacts. She got rid of everybody to try to rebrand herself. And so it's almost nine Toyota Celica with 500,000 miles on it. And then you put a fiberglass body kit for a brand new Ferrari on it. That's what she was trying to do. Now, is she a she's good looking. She's pretty attractive, but not what this guy wanted. And again, guys need to stop rolling the dice when it comes to women. And also too, she'd actually been arrested a couple of times.
For what? Hold on. The question is for what?
Okay, we don't know if she was selling anything at the time, but she got caught giving a blowjob in a car in a parking lot outside a club it was like a Saturday morning. It was OPD. OPD arrested her and the guy she was taking care of in the car. And the other one was DUI. And so, like it's but I don't want to go too far into the weeds, but it's just background. And so when you look at like people who get arrested, there's so many different people that get arrested for different things. And the first thing people usually try to do is bargain with you. They usually try to say, okay, look, I'll pay you this much money. You guys always try to throw money at you, or they'll try to threaten you, or some guys try to run. And I remember one in particular. It was me and a Puerto Rican guy, the couple that owned the bail bonds company, devout Muslims, to where she wears the hijab, everything. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so we had to go find a guy in a place called Astor. Astor, Florida is very low income, rural, so trailer parks. So a lot of very poor white people. And so we roll in there, the 4 of us, into this trailer park, and there's Confederate. Are we recording?
So you went up to pick up in the trailer park, yeah?
Yeah. So it's the 4 of us, very brown skinned people, going to a very, very white trailer park, Confederate flags everywhere. And so I was like, oh boy, this is gonna be fun. And so we get to the trailer. We know the guy's there. So we had a CI. It's always one of their friends that sells them out. And so we had a CI that we promised some money to if he told us where he was. And so we get there. I get to the door, and my partner is around back, and I'm at the front. And so the homeowner comes out, the trailer, the guy who owns the trailer comes out, and I tell him what we're there for. And I'm like, look, man, I know the guy's here. And so we talked our way into the trailer. Well, the guy's girlfriend, very, a lot of not a lot of tattoos, very busty blonde lady, takes me outside and goes, well, look,
Busty.
yeah, very heavy up top. You know what I mean? Yeah, very, very much. They were fake, but who cares? As long as the skin on the outside
No,
is
fake
real.
on the fake. I mean, they're in the trailer park, and she has fake tits. I
Yeah,
mean, go figure.
priorities, right?
Priorities.
And so she winds up saying, okay, look, if you get him out of here, then she actually wanted him to go because he was actually causing problems that had been beating her up. And so I wound up talking to this guy for about a half an hour, talked him into giving himself up. So he comes outside, the police show up, they're like, how'd you get him out? I said, I just talked to him for a while, got him out, we took him to jail, I let him call his mother. Well, the very next day, because I gave her my business card, his girlfriend propositioned me, and his girlfriend wanted to hook up with me. Her boyfriend is in jail for less than 24 hours, and she called me for a hookup.
For what? Hold on, but for what was the purpose of it? I mean, like, if it was to get the guy out, or
Well, no,
what is it?
we had to arrest him because he was out on bond. He skipped court, and
Uh-huh.
so the
Uh-huh.
bondsman, if we didn't get him, the bondsman was going to lose $50,000. And so
Okay, fine. But what was the purpose for her to shag you?
she just, I guess she just, maybe she had jungle fever, and I don't know, and she just wanted,
Confederate flag, that type of
yeah,
shit, and on top of that, she was beaten by her ex-boyfriend. I mean, by
yeah,
her boyfriend. Oh my
yeah.
god, this is
Look, man, look, women, look,
sounds crazy,
I
man.
actually know a woman. This is a different side story, but I actually know a woman now, and admittedly, she's a redhead, so they're a little bit, sometimes a little bit crazy. But years ago,
Yeah, yeah.
her ex-husband beat her up and put her in a coma. He was put in jail. He went to prison for a while. The police had to tase him. He was holding her at knife point. Just horrible. She gets married years later, and she cheated on her husband, who provided her with a good home, safety, takes care of her. She cheated on her husband with the guy who beat her up and put her in a coma. Can't explain it, man. Like it's
You,
the weirdest thing.
wait,
Women,
look, man. You know how many times I've had a woman ask me, "Are you a serial killer?" You know, on those apps, I'm like, "Is this what you attract? Is this what you attract, or is this what you wish me to be?" Because I'm tired. You all sound the same. You know, it's like
I hate this. I hate to
seriously.
sound like this. If I look, I know so many women. I've talked to so many women who have ex-boyfriends or ex-husbands that would beat them up and frighten them and terrorize them. And whenever you ask them, okay, how long were you together? They'll say, oh, I was with him for 15 years. Okay, so for 15 years, you stayed with this dude who beat you up regularly, treated you badly, stole your money, had sex with your friends. Women seem to, and I hate to say this, some of them seem to enjoy being with dudes that are abusive. Like, there's no other way to explain it. I think there was a study put
You
out.
know, I'll tell
Good.
I made a joke tweet, but there's truth to it, right? Which was women love narcissists because they beat them at their own game, and it's like women love abusers because they abuse they're better abuser than them. It's like the same thing.
That's honestly, from what I've seen, that's spot on, man. Like I know so many that have dudes in their past, and here's what happens when they have an abusive dude. They'll finally get away from the abusive guy, or maybe the abusive guy just dumps them. They'll find a good guy, and they'll cheat on the good guy with the same abusive guy or another abusive guy. Like I've seen cases where, again, where a guy's girlfriend, well, his wife was supposed to be out of town. She was actually at a Disney resort. They live in Orlando. She said she flew to Michigan. She was at a Disney resort with her ex-boyfriend, who beat her up also too, who had to be arrested, put her in the hospital, and he beat her up again. The only reason the guy found out was because the sheriffs were called, because while they were staying in a resort, he beat her up again, and she had to go to the hospital. And so the sheriff had to call him and say, hey, look, your wife is in the hospital. This is what happened. Oh, no, she's not in the hospital. She's not here. She's in Michigan. No, she's not. She's at a Disney resort 30 minutes away from your home, shacked up with another dude, and he beat her up. And it's like holy cow. And the guy married her and adopted her two children by this guy, and that's his reward.
And at this point, hold on, did he do that after or before the
It
deed?
was before.
Well, the thing is, it's like if you're taking on other people's mess, don't be surprised that he's gonna come and fucking go back, clap back at you. It's like you're asking for it.
It actually gets worse for him. Okay, so so some of his friends called me and said, "Hey, you need to have a talk with him." I knew him casually. I knew him pretty decently, but he wasn't like a really good friend of mine. And they said, "Look, you need to give him a." I have talks with people like what I call a no shitter. The no shitter talk is bare bones facts, brutal, honest truth. And most people don't like delivering that hard news. And like I said, sometimes I feel like the Grim Reaper because I'm always delivering bad news to people, but it's the truth. And so they said, "Look, you need to talk to Russ. Russ is going to set you straight." This is after this whole debacle at the Disney resort. And so I'm sitting there. He's telling me the story, and he was like, "Oh, but she said she didn't. She said it wasn't physical, and you have to know her." And I was like, "Dude, you're joking, right?" He was like, "No, no, no." I said, "Dude, your wife was there getting boned by another dude, man. That's what was happening. Her ex-boyfriend was cutting a slice while you were at home watching her kids. So you were at home watching her kids and his kids too, while he's partaking of your now wife." I said, "That's what was going on." He didn't believe it, didn't do anything.
He was babysitting.
Yeah, he was babysitting. You'd be surprised how often that happens. Women will have their husband watching the kids while they go out and mess around. Why? Because they know if you're at the kids, you're not going to be following them. You know what I mean? Or finding out what they're doing. You're going to be busy. And so he didn't leave her. He didn't
Well,
believe.
she gets busy.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. They're out there doing whatever they got to do while you're at home, and then they'll ingest and swallow a bunch of DNA, then come home and kiss their husbands just to be spiteful. It's evil. Like some of them are evil, man. And so with this guy, it actually gets worse for him, believe it or not, because he was in denial. And finally, I just said, "Look, dude, I don't know what to tell you. Your wife is screwing this other dude." I said, "You know, it doesn't need you don't need a private investigator. You know, your wife is screwing around. You know what I mean? Like I'd be stealing your money. You know, just dude, like dude, she's cheating on you." He didn't believe it. I said, okay. And so about a month later, he decides he's going to be Mr. Nice Guy, still Mr. Nice Guy. He's always a really nice guy. I tell guys, don't be so nice. As you know, and he decides he's going to surprise his wife at work with a picnic. So like a straight up bitch, he puts together like a picnic basket, yeah, you know what I mean? And drives, parks his truck next to her car. All right, so the pickup truck is elevated. You know, the car is lower, obviously, a sedan. And he looks over, and his wife is giving her boss a blowjob. He drives up on it. He doesn't say anything. He drives off, and he kind of went off the deep end, and he had to be institutionalized for a couple of days and under observation. And so here is called Baker Act. Baker Act is if you could be a danger to yourself or others, the police will send you to one of these places, like this place like Lakeside Mental Institution or whatever. He wound up getting Baker Acted for a few days. He wound up getting out. They determined he wasn't crazy because he's one of these really passive guys that internalizes everything. But he saw his wife doing what she was doing to her boss, and I'm like, so he called me up, and then, well, actually, the sheriff calls me up. A detective from the Seminole County Sheriff's calls me up and says, look, this is what happened. And the guy's a gun owner. He said, he gave us your name, said that you were a responsible, individual. We want you to take custody of his guns for 1 year and don't give them back. So I actually had to hold on to his guns for a year, to make sure he wasn't gonna, go crazy or whatever. I think they just do that just to be safe. They didn't have. There's no legal precedence for it, but he went crazy. He went crazy because he saw his wife doing this, and I'm sitting there like, he's sitting there telling me about it. I was like, dude, some of these guys, I swear, men are more victimized by Disney than women are, because men have this view in their head that if they're Prince Charming,
Yes.
they're Prince Charming, like that women are going to reward them. And what I try to tell guys is this: do not expect gratitude. You're not going to get any gratitude from women. They're not going to remember anything you did for them. They're going to have a short memory for anything you do, but a very long memory for anything that they can hold against you.
Everything they do.
And
Or they did for you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like my ex-wife actually saved and printed out an email I sent her about a conversation we had. It was literally just relaying or recounting a conversation we had. Nothing mean, nothing bad. And she used that. Oh, look, my husband is controlling and this and that because she wanted to do the girls' nights out thing with her coworkers. And I said, look, I can't stop you from doing girls' night out. I said, you're an adult. I said, but when you get back home, the locks will be changed and your stuff will be outside. So you decide if you want to do girls' night out. I wasn't going to tolerate the girls' night out thing. The girls' trips, the girls' night out. Women cheat on those things so much, man. They find ways to cheat, but especially if you give them a pass, you let your woman go on girls' night out. And again, you can't stop an adult from doing anything. But if there has to be, she has to understand, like, look, you can go do what you want. And my thing was like, look, if you go to girls' night out, I'm going to change the locks, and I'm going to pack your stuff out, and it's going to be out in the front lawn. like that's the end of it. And
No, but you see, but even if she wants to do that, it's almost like the medium's a message. It's like, like,
yeah,
it's a matter of time before if she says no, there'll be a resentment, and then it's like that's going to build up, and she's going to put that in her little Excel spreadsheet or a little Word document. Oh, on the 25th of March, 2000, he said, da, 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 da. It's like that's it. You think, like, Windows. I'm sure the first Windows software when it comes to memory was used by looking at a girl's brain, as a woman's brain, so that basically they could record, on the hard drive all the stuff that you basically did. That's it.
That's it. Yeah, the guys just got to be stronger, and you have to enforce boundaries. If you don't, look, I've seen countless instances of women cheating on girls' night out, like literally countless. It happens so often. Any dude that allows girls' night out, you're a sucker. You're a sucker. If you let your woman go on girls' trips, you're a chump. You're being played. I feel bad for some of these guys because they honestly think in their mind that they can trust their wives. A lot of these guys, most guys cannot trust their spouses because they give them, and again, this is going to sound really mean, and people will say I'm being misogynistic, but the women who don't cheat are the women who don't have opportunities to cheat in the most part, because their friends, they might not start out wanting to cheat, but their friends and their coworkers will talk them into it. They will encourage it because they get away with it, and it becomes like this
Yeah.
women's cheating club.
Yeah, it's like the women's book club. But think about it this way, right? You've ever seen a girl that's like, just look at a guy and you'd be like, yeah, whatever. I'm like, nothing to write home about. Then her friends be like, oh my god, he's so hot. And then she'd be like, actually, you know what? I think he's hot. So it's like monkey see, monkey do. They have no agencies. They have no like independent thought process. So you just need one hole, one slag, and it's a wrap. That's it.
Yeah.
It's a wrap.
Yeah.
And it's like, and they don't have the foresight nor the intelligence, or maybe they do. And what they're doing is they don't want to see how weak you are. Because the other thing is, insecurity it's not about whether or not you let your girl go to a girl's night out or not, is whether you care whether or not the girl is going to prove that you don't want to go on girl's night out. And then, in a way, if you let her, you are actually you're actually demonstrating the insecurity that she claimed you had over her not going on girls' night out by accepting, because you were too worried that she would disapprove of your quote unquote controlling behavior. No, you're a steward to the relationship, because if you let the relationship under the management of your wife or girlfriend's emotion, guess where it's going to go?
Toilet.
Nowhere.
The toilet, man. It's gonna go to the
Yeah,
toilet.
toilet, yeah.
And like, so I see a lot of these guys online. They'll say, look, if you're insecure, if you're secure in your relationship, that's the bullshit, the biggest bullshit line. If a man is secure in his relationship and trusts his woman, he won't mind if she goes out with her ex-boyfriend or her ex-husband or her college sweetheart or whatever, or like, dude, I've documented so many of these cases where women are using that man's trust and that inordinate amount of freedom to go in to have extramarital or extra relationship affairs, and it never fails. They may not start out that way, but they'll end up in the same destination, especially with their friends. And so, like, what Mayan used to do was say, my friends are all good people. They wouldn't do this, they wouldn't do that. When she and I separated, I did what most guys do. They started looking at the dating apps. I don't mess with dating apps anymore. They're a waste of time for the most part. Two of her four friends are on dating apps even today. They're married women. They're on dating apps. Married on dating apps right now. And I'm sitting there like, oh, okay, these are the good girls. All right. These are the good girls. And I'm like, I've got a good buddy. He divorced his wife, and he went on a revenge spree, my friend. And when I say revenge, he had sex with multiple of her friends and coworkers. So women will sabotage each other. They have the girls' cheating club, but that same woman that encouraged her friend to go cheat will sleep with that same woman's husband or boyfriend. It never fails. They are treacherous and ruthless, man. Like, the treachery is
Hey,
unbelievable.
look, you can't trust women because they don't trust themselves.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah, yeah, and well, also too, they're pack animals, and so if they cheat, it's almost always a group effort. It is.
Teamwork.
Yeah, what they do, but like I've seen, I think I've written stories about how men have been cheated on by their wives, and the guy's own mother was helping facilitate the cheating daughter-in-law. Like, your mother, literally, you can't trust your mother. Who can you trust?
You know, you know. I'll give you an example, right? I was at home, right? It's like I was writing some stuff, right? Like writing, like, like I've got like a repository of like a lot of stuff that, and it's like my mom comes in the room, right? Because I was just on holiday, wherever, and she looks at it and she'd be like, can I read more? And I'm like, nah, no, you won't like it. Oh, you're writing those misogynistic stuff, and I'm just like, it's just intersexual dynamics, nothing big, right? Anyway, and she's like, but what did I do to you, for you to have those wrong thing about women? Why can you not, like, I didn't teach you all of this. It's like, yes, if you did, if I did follow all of what you told me, I'd still be a virgin by now. And then she asked me, like, like, what was the thing she said? She was like, but who made you like this? And I said, you did. And I was like, well, what? I was like, yeah, because you put the bar so high. Nobody. And she was about to basically, you know, clap back. She's like, no, I did. Oh, you said you put the bar so high. Yeah, nobody can compete against you. And like, no, she was not. She was not.
Perfect.
She
Yeah.
was not giving me bullshit.
Yeah. Wow.
As long as you cater to their ego, it's crazy how women will overlook other things.
Yeah. And like I've look, I know a woman now, very educated woman, higher degree, right? So PhD, and he went with a guy. She cheated on her husband with a a party guy. Well, the party guy gave her an STD, right?
I knew it.
Well, and she took it back home and gave it to her husband. And so,
Hello.
and this has happened a bunch of times, man. People just don't talk about it, but this has happened a lot with a lot of different people. And so they wind up getting divorced. Guess who the first guy she goes and hooks up with again? The same guy who
The fun
gave her the
guy.
STD. The same dude. I'm sitting there like, are you insane? And
I
so,
mean, at this rate, STDs will be pre-selection indicators.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Look, man, there's a lot of women that are walking around out there with, and I try to tell guys all the time, cover up, cover up, protect yourselves, because there are a lot of women out there that, they have things that don't disclose it. They won't tell somebody they've known they've got something, but they won't tell, or sometimes they don't know, but a lot of times they just
Yeah,
won't tell you that they have something, and they'll let you go in there raw anyway. Like they'll let you go there
yeah.
anyway, and it's like, so guys got to be careful. But funny bail bond story. Me and another bail bondsman tracked down a woman, very pretty woman, like beautiful, a
Mm.
9 to 10, maybe 8.5, like almost perfect, man, beautiful. And so we roll up on her, we're arresting her, and we get her in the car. And we always keep video cameras in the car, and sometimes we'll wear body cameras on us. That way, nobody can say later on that we did or said anything inappropriate, just to protect ourselves. And so we're in the car. We're in a Suburban. I'm driving. He's in the back seat. She's on the other side. She's handcuffed. We have restraints in the car. And so she literally goes, "Hey, look, guys, I'll make you a deal." And we're like, okay, okay, let's hear it, right? Because we've heard every deal. And so she goes, okay, I was like, we've heard all of them, And so, okay, yeah, okay, let's see, what do you got? What do you got that's different? She goes, I'll pay you guys whatever it is that you're going to lose. And again, she comes from money. She just didn't want to go to jail and face the music. So I'll pay you guys whatever it is I need to pay you, plus I'll let you guys do whatever you want with me. And I was like, what do you mean, whatever you want? She said, whatever you want. She said, back door, whatever. And literally, I looked at my buddy like, I was like, nah, no, we can't. Sorry. I said,
The art of the deal, my friend. The art of the deal.
look, and the negotiation with women when it comes to bail bonds, man, is always sex. Like they always offer sex, man. And it's
You know,
amazing.
I'm curious, man. I'm curious because I'm like, you know what? Like, I'll look at the numbers of Bell Bondsman Company rising. Stop now. After this video, you have like a lot of new Bell Bondsman Company coming in. But the thing is, all right, think about it this way, okay? Say, say you said yes on the enticing offer, right? Say you said yes and you let her go and you had your fun time and she paid you those stuff, right? Would you be losing money on it? Would you be losing credibility? What would happen?
Well,
What would be the negative side?
well, to be honest with you, the bail bonds license is not a, like, we're not cops, so we don't swear an oath. And so technically, a
Mhm,
bail bondsman can get away with that. But what
mhm.
happens is this: your reputation is so important that if no one will want to do business with you again. And not just that, from the insurance company side, the insurance company wants us to chase down people who skip. Even regardless of the loss, they do it because they want to discourage people from trying to skip. Now, do I know of some bail bondsmen that have done that? Yes, yes.
How much was the bail for? How much was the bail
What,
for?
this woman?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we were getting paid 10% of a $50,000 bond. So she was actually
So
willing.
imagine you got 50,000
Well, yeah, she was willing to pay the bail bondsman whatever he would have lost, 50 grand, plus let us do whatever we want.
interest.
But most women don't offer that. They just offer their bodies. But you
Yes,
know,
bit cheap.
yeah, but look, there are guys that partake. But here's the thing:
Because
if they here's the thing about that though, and I think women have found this out. If they trade that reprieve is temporary, because okay, maybe that guy didn't arrest you, but another bondsman might later on. Or if the police encounter you and you have a warrant, they'll arrest you. And so it's a bill that has to be paid at some point, no matter what. Like you can't walk away from that bill. It's the unpaid bill that has to be paid. And so at some point you're going to get arrested. And so like I've heard stories, I won't say obviously names of who, but there are bail bondsmen that are somewhat unethical, and they'll allow things, or allow women to work their way out of going to jail by offering
because
their bodies.
I'm just thinking from a pure, like, from a pure logical perspective here. Say she pays the full bonds, right? Then you get then you get the 10% interest in kind, and then say that you can't find her, right? If you pay the insurance company back, win-win.
Yeah, yeah. But here's the thing: you pay the insurance company back, but the open warrant with the county still stands.
Oh, that's a problem.
Yeah, yeah. And so technically, yes, it could work out that way, as long as they don't get caught. But eventually, somebody gets pulled over. The police pull you over or whatever might happen, and not in every case, but in most cases. But it happens so frequently that we expect women to bargain with sex. We expect it. It happens
Yeah.
almost every time.
And in terms of what was the issue behind or the first arrest? Why? I mean, yeah, she was an 8, 9, but like, what was the thing that she got arrested for?
He got arrested for, I can't go into detail, but she got arrested for some financial fraud. So her bond was 50 grand. It probably should have been more, but he defrauded some people out of some money, and her attorney got her bond, and then she skipped on the bond.
The 8 man. No wonder you didn't want to take the money. She would have defrauded you.
She probably would have given us counterfeit money or something. Who knows?
Exactly.
But yeah, she was like, "Look, you can do whatever you want with me. Back door, front door, this way, that way, whatever." I was like, "Wow." I was like, "Wow." I said, "Okay, well, no."
You know what? You know what? You should even just just before you say no, just push it. Just see how far it is. Can I take a shit on you? Can I piss on you? And then it's like, yeah, no. And I said, no, I'm joking. It's cool. Whatever.
Look, man, you know what? They talk about the Dubai porta potty thing, right? This
Yeah,
is
yeah.
this is not a new phenomenon. Like when I lived overseas, I think that I was in the military. And then I worked for some private military companies, but I've also done some bodyguard work in the Middle East, North Africa, and here in the States and South America. And so there was one guy, Middle Eastern guy, super wealthy guy. Well, he wasn't super. His dad was super wealthy, and his dad bought him a vacation facility just to get him out of the country and keep him out of trouble. And on multiple occasions, this guy would proposition women, a lot of times with their husbands, for money to spend
Yeah,
to
you told
spend time with.
us.
Yeah, dude. And but that happened. Like I didn't tell many of those, but because it just happened so much. Like everybody was accustomed to this guy doing this, and he would just keep going. Like he would start at like, okay, $10,000, and people would get angry and be upset. Then $50,000, they'd still be upset. The husband especially, oh, I'll kick your backside or whatever. $100,000, the voices and the protests start reducing. $200,000, they get smaller. $250,000, silence, silence. You know what I mean? And so he has paid for the services of women for a week, 10 days at a time, um, and paid their husbands. Here. Here's $250,000. I'm going to use and abuse your wife in any way I choose, my friends choose, and here's what you get. But that happened multiple times. He wasn't the only one who did it. When you have that much money, you know what I mean? It just becomes a number. Like I know a guy now. I've used him for information and for background because I do some consulting work. He used to be an attorney. I say used to be an attorney because he was disbarred. He was disbarred because he was. This was during the cocaine cowboys days. I don't know if you heard of that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So Miami
Look at them.
cocaine cowboys days, 80s, early 90s was when the cocaine, thing from was just went crazy. And what he would do is he didn't sell drugs, he didn't launder money, but what he did was he advised the cartel's money launderers how to avoid the authorities. And so because of that, the FBI arrested him and then said, okay, if you give up your law degree, you get out of jail. So he gave up his law. He gave his law license, not his law degree. And so the stories he would tell, you hear stories about people offering women money and then warehouses full of pallets of money. Like this guy was there and actually saw this stuff. And brilliant guy, but he just got caught up in the wrong thing. But and he was like, look, I was getting paid. He said, I was getting paid just to offer advice. I was getting paid $1 million a month. He goes, I went from making maybe 200 grand a year as an independent attorney to making $1 million a month just offering advice. He said, I never touched any drugs. He said, but I got to see the pallets and the warehouses full of cash. He said, but I also saw guys literally buying people's girlfriends right in front of them. Like, hey, I'll pay you 100 grand to go home with me tonight. And chicks will just get up and leave their boyfriends that they love or whatever else for cash. And it happens so much.
Everyone has a price. Everyone has a price.
Yeah. Yeah, sad to say, man. I think one of your favorites and my favorite quoted this. He said, "Look, she's not out of your league. She's just out of your price range." And so
Yeah.
Coach Greg, shout out to Coach Greg.
Coach Greg, yeah.
Very very smart guy. He does a lot of work, 3 4 hours a day, twice a day. I don't know how he does it, but he puts in great work.
We
But
know
go ahead, sorry.
if a girl says to if a girl says to you, I'm out of your league, well, you know what you're gonna say, guys? You say, yeah, indeed, you could do with a promotion.
Yeah.
That's
Look,
for Lil Riz here. Anyway.
the money factor plays such a huge it's a huge component, especially the more you have. Obviously there are other markers, like some guys say, oh, you have to be this height and this and that and everything else, and if you're not tall. I know plenty of, like, okay, a guy I know right now, this guy is 5'7", freckle faced, balding, white guy who's not a good looking
Mhm.
dude. This guy gets women like it's his job. Like, I'm not even kidding, man. Like he just gets women over. Like, I remember one time I told him I was dating a redheaded chick. Oh, what's her name? Oh,
Mhm.
I gave him the name. He was like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I took her virginity. I said, oh my God, dude. It was like, oh yeah, well, hey, I'm dating this other chick now. Messing with this other chick now. Oh, what's her name? So I was like, oh yeah, yeah, I dated her before. I was like, oh Jesus. Like this guy has been
Hey
through
man,
so many women.
I have a group chat with guys that are chads, right, in London. And every time before I see a chick, I send that to the group chat. Say, anyone been there? Yeah,
Yeah,
no, okay, good. Thank you very much.
I guess it's a good
Well,
question.
man, she's a real hoe, man. Like she, like, I have like a belt over the mouse, and I was like riding her like a pony in a rodeo. But the thing is, guys don't even know, like, I had a date like with this girl, and you're like very prim and proper. Right? Because I thought, like, oh, consultant, very well to do. She has her own business. So for me, because I'm very good at extracting information from people without them even realizing. And then I realized that she was into, like, ethical non-monogamy, basically girlfriend of like some couple, go to sex parties. You wouldn't see that from the profile.
No, 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 man.
And it's like, and then she gonna play prim and proper to some fucker.
Yeah, look, maybe one of these days I'll tell a story. I actually had to infiltrate a swingers club here locally. And here's the funny part, man. I saw so many people that I knew. And the funny part is when they saw me, they know I'm a private investigator. And when they saw me, they were like, they're ducking away and leaving. And then I see them later on. Obviously, I'm not gonna bust them because they weren't the subject of the investigation. You know what I mean? But I saw
Yeah,
a few people. One of them is and this was out of the area, but one of them is actually a judge. One of them is actually a judge.
man, you joking,
No,
right? I remember, right? Like, hold on, hold on. I remember, right? I was at work and I made a bit of a borderline joke against the community that cannot be named. Anyway, it happened that the girl that I made the joke to was from that community. That didn't really go down well. Anyway, over time, I managed to get myself out of those murky waters. But that little girl looked very nice, very dressed conservatively, French as well, right? But it was in the UK, and she invited me to some private parties. And I knew that in those private, I mean, I didn't take any of the invites, but in those private parties, I know there was a very well-known French politician that went on to do a French presidential election. Not gonna say the name, but yeah, man. And I was like, the people you find there, because there's also this idea of realm of trust, where if people know that this other people is part of that type of that part of world, it's like I hold you by the by the beard, you hold me by the beard, so you don't say anything, otherwise I'm gonna snitch on you, right? And so everybody's basically having this type of bond of trust because everybody don't want to get nobody wants to swimming naked when the tide is low. Let's call it like that.
yeah. Well, they used to call it back in the 80s and 90s. They used to call it the mutually assured destruction. And so if we're both doing the same thing, nobody's going to say anything because we both have something to lose.
Yeah.
Right? And so, like when I actually know, and the person who helped me infiltrate this was a woman I know. He, if you look at her, she's a grandmother, but she's one of those, hot grandmothers. You know what I mean? She had a child very young. She's in very good shape. Actually, very, very pretty. And guys have this thing about being pretty, and pretty is not makeup or hair or nails. It's
Yeah.
bone structure. It's bone structure. You cannot fake bone
Mm-hmm.
structure. They do the contouring makeup to make themselves look more attractive, but you can't fake bone structure.
Mm-hmm.
But this woman, as I'm sitting down talking to her, she's telling me about her history, her past, and she had a couple of boyfriends that would literally pass her around to friends. And she was like the woman that they'd bring to sex clubs, and everybody would take a turn on her. And so, as I'm having to infiltrate this, but she was telling me what to do, and she actually went with me.
Infiltrate. You
Yeah,
infiltrate.
she actually, yeah, infiltrated. Yeah, I had to penetrate the organization, and so she actually vouched for me and took me to these places, and I'm sitting there like, and so my thing was just to document. Now you don't have to get involved with everything when you go there, but you get to see everybody what they're doing, and some of the people you see there, man. Holy cow, their tax bracket is way, way up here. And so, and my point by that, like, people put some of these people on a pedestal, and I think it's the wrong thing to do. You shouldn't put anybody on a pedestal. Everybody from every walk of life can be involved in all types of stuff, man. And so, like, we have a tendency to look, guys especially, some of the guys I've talked to, look at women and not look any further than their looks. That's why women focus on their looks so much, because they know most guys just see the looks. And if women are good at, on their face value, hiding the deep dark past. Now, guys like you and guys like me, who we've been around, we're men of the world. We've been with many different women. I can look at a woman, and just like you can, I'm sure, and in an instant, I can tell if she's been around really, really quickly and easily. And it's something in their eyes that you see, that right away. And so one of the things I used to do on the dating apps, when I was on the dating apps, and even when I meet women out in the wild, because I don't use dating apps anymore, I'll meet women going to the grocery store or whatever. It's easier that way. And so, if a woman leans into heavily into religion, so if they put in there, oh, I'm religious, I'm on fire for Jesus, or whatever they're putting on there, right? I know with a certainty, with 90% accuracy, if I meet them in person, I can get a blowjob or have sex with them that day. It
You just have
literally.
to you just have to say this is a confession room, right? Why do you think they have a confession room
Yeah,
nobody can see?
Well, you know, they
Just make sure that you have like the pee hole. But you know, like the glory hole, yeah, yeah. Just make sure you have the glory hole in your confession room, right? It's fine. I'll give you, you know, here.
yeah, just go home and
You're
say,
blessed now. You're
yeah,
blessed.
go home and say 100 Hail Marys and you're forgiven, you know, afterwards, you know, and so guys will be fooled by looks, man. This is why women spend so much money on how they look and filters and everything else on Instagram and other profile pictures.
Hold on. Yesterday I got into hot waters because I said guys prefer them non-natural than natural. I'm like, and everybody said, "No, I prefer them natural." So,
You
oh,
know,
really?
look, here's the thing. Look, if women could get away with being natural all the time, then no guys would ever go out with these women based on their pictures. You made an accurate statement. People just don't like hearing the truth. That was an accurate statement. Most guys do like the way women look in makeup. Now, the key is to be able to see past the makeup and to see if you're being completely catfit by a person just in real
Yeah.
time. You know, with their because they can do so many amazing things with makeup, man. Holy smokes, man! They look like a completely different person.
I know. Like I've been caught up with a couple of master splinters. But you know, it's but going on to the sex parties, right? So I've been to a few, right? And you see a bit of everything, right? I remember there was this woman that was like on the bed, and there was like guys from this to this. There was like a queue. It was like Bonnie Blue and Lily Phillips beforehand,
Oh
right?
my
And
god.
there was a husband just there watching.
Uh,
Or like, you know, and the thing is, they're well established people. Like you would be surprised because a lot of them actually are not like you're. They're more on the higher front because it's like I've been asked a few times to go back to their place, you know, to basically, you know, be the bull. Like seriously, what did another one? I must find another one. What was it? Because also a lot of women that may not necessarily be at the high end go there in order to find guys from the high end.
yeah,
That's also another thing they don't say.
yeah, yeah. And we had a
Oh
thing
God,
when I was in the military. There was a guy, and stop me if I told you this before. A guy named Smitty.
oh God.
Smitty was a virgin. Smitty was probably one of the ugliest people you've ever met in your entire life. Like this was an ugly dude. You know what I mean? And so we were on deployment in a foreign country, and he gets back and he's saying, "Okay, I lost my virginity." You know, being guys, we're all like, "Oh, hey, tell us what happened," right? And so
Yeah, you know what?
the more he tells us, the more horrified we become. I can see that people's faces get more and more horrified as he tells us more of the details. So here's what this guy did. So he goes to a whorehouse. Okay, you know, a lot of guys lose their virginity at a whorehouse, whatever. You know, we're in the military. We're not going to judge the guy. Do what you got to do, right? Okay, whatever. So what happened? Well, what was the girl like? He said, well, you know, I paid my money. He paid $200. And we're like, okay, what happened? Well, I had to wait in line. Oh, wait, you had to wait in line. You paid $200, wait in line. Okay, how long was the line? Like 15 or 16 guys. Okay. And so we're like, okay, that's not ideal, right? But okay, well, okay, well, whatever else. And so when he gets up there, we goes, okay, man. So what'd you do, man? Did you blow your load in a second? Blah blah blah. Oh no, I didn't blow a load. Why? What happened? Well, I wanted the full experience, so I decided to go down on her. And we're like,
I
oh,
knew it. I knew it.
I'm not kidding you, man. And we were just like, oh my god. And I just said, dude, I said, Smitty. He said, yeah. I said, you just sucked 16 dicks, pretty much, my friend.
Oh,
I said, so you waited in line, you paid $200 for a whore, waiting in line. You were 15 or 16 in line that you know of. Maybe there was some before him. Who knows? I said, then you decide to go down on her and you didn't even bust a nut. He was like, no. I had to come home. I had to come back here and jerk off pretty much. And we're just like 3 days later, he's at sick call. He's at sick call. He gets a freaking STD from eating out a hooker. Who would guess that you would get an STD from hitting out a? And we're just like, dude, that was the worst story. We're just like
I mean,
and we told him, we said,
Smithy was not witty.
yeah, we told him, we said, look, man, next time you need to talk to somebody. I said, that's ridiculous, man. But yeah, he did it. And so now on the flip side, uh, one thing I think you'll like, I'm actually put a video out about the sexual activity consent form. Right, that's one
Mhm.
of the things I use just to make sure that consent is such a huge thing nowadays. You know, guys roll the dice. You know, a woman could turn around and say, "Oh, he didn't ask for consent." Used to be you just went with the flow, right? One thing led to another. Well, I try to counsel guys be careful because I've seen too many guys get really like I worked on a case recently where a guy is in jeopardy of losing his freedom, and he didn't do anything differently than anybody else does. And so the funny part is on the sexual activity consent form, it'll have different categories of different things that they consent to, whether kissing, petting, finger, fellatio. I said, and so my thing is this, man. Since I'm of Jamaican descent, when it goes to cunnilingus, going down on a girl, I have a circle with a line through it. I said, I'm pretty sure it's in the Jamaican Constitution that we're not allowed to eat pom pom. I said, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. And so I've actually had conversations with women saying, "Well, you expect me to go down on you? Yes, I do. But you're not going to go down on me. No, I'm not. I'm not going. That's the deal. Take it or leave it. It's just Jamaican men are not supposed to not say anything bad
You
about
know
you.
what? You know what? Maybe you should try that next time. You say, I mean, I would like, but I'm really bad at it. I'm really, really bad at it. You're better off with your finger. So let it smooth a little bit rather than just be conflictual. Just be like, I don't know where the clitoris is. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I mean, it's been 20 years that I've been trying to find it, but it's an urban legend to me.
yeah, like I've had ones that like that. That's the deal. I'm just not going to do it. And they think is they think is it's selfish. Okay, yes, okay, yeah, I'm selfish. Right, fine, but that's the deal. The sex clubs, they're very prolific amongst wealthy people, like a lot of them, and that's where a lot of them get their business associations and do deals instead of on the golf course. They're trading they're swapping wives.
The principle remains the same. It's different holes, right, throughout the parkour.
Yeah. And like it was like going to these places was an eye opener for me because you just like you walking past rooms like, oh, what, oh my god, what the heck? And then you see these same people out and about in their suits, their ties, in their offices, and you think they're or you see them in church, which behind the pulpit preaching to people. Like I've seen that, and it's like, oh
Hold
my
on.
gosh.
I'll tell you a story. I was, what, 19? And I had a friend that was very good at networking and everything. What's south of France? South of France. I'm not going to say the name of the place, right? But in the Côte d'Azur. And he tells me, Olivier, I need your skills. And I was like, all right, cool. But what do you need me to? Don't worry. Just bring your ass from Paris down to the place. I'm like, all right, cool. You're gonna be taken care of. You're gonna go stay into a nice complex. You get paid, you get fed, you get your clothes clean and everything. And it's like, but why do you ask me? Why? I mean, it's like, look, I know you're gonna be good. I'm like, all right, fine. And I do like a blind. And I'm spontaneous and everything. I remember I was supposed to work for a hosting company. Like being a corporate host and everything to basically bullshit them in order to get there, right? So I go there. He picks me up, blah blah blah. Then introduce me to a person within like some type of black van. I'm just like, all right, cool. And I thought he was the main guy. He was not. He was just one of the servants of the main guy, right? And we go from and it's like, and then we go from one sex part, place for sex party after the other, and what we need to do is we need to harvest different couples to have a massive orgy in the villa, right? We arrive to the villa, like crazy view, crazy fucking view, right? Uh, like walk up, woman's fuck, like the main mistress of the house, naked, naked. Just walking around naked. Then you had like some other people working there. I was like, what is this? We had to basically put our phone so that people couldn't take pictures and everything. Let it rip. And then afterwards, I remember that one of the guys that I was actually, uh, talking to, like, I thought it was nobody. Let's just say it's very, very fucking higher up level, top level. I can't say his name,
Yeah.
but this is, and I can't say much more than that. So it's like, and when you see this, where basically those people not going to go to the sex party, but going to use guys like us in order to, bring people to have a massive orgy at theirs where they control the environment, and it's a whole new different ballgame.
Yeah, it's for me. I was look and again when I worked in Los Angeles, when I lived in Los Angeles, you saw a lot of different debauchery. Los Angeles, especially Hollywood, is a completely different animal altogether by itself. But even here in Central Florida, even in places that are somewhat rural, where you think everybody has these conservative values or whatever else, because like Central Florida is, some people call it the belt buckle of the Bible Belt. You know what I mean? And so very, a lot of
The
churches
belt
of
buckled.
the Bible Belt, yeah,
Okay, yeah, belt.
and so very religious. But so many of these religious people, that's why I tell people, look, man, take some of this stuff with a grain of salt, because many of the people that are telling you how to live aren't living that way. Like they're not they're not actually living the way they're telling you should live. And so like I've bonded out and had to chase down all types of people from all walks of life, whether they're conservative, whether they're liberal, whether religious, atheist, whatever it is. People are people, across the board, in my experience.
Yeah.
And so with like from just the bail bonds, private eye side, I've actually had women try to hire me as a private investigator, and female attorneys have offered me parts of themselves uh, in exchange for yeah,
Like a
yeah,
car.
yeah, yeah, in exchange for investigative services. Now, look, I can get laid, yeah,
Investigating, yeah.
right. And I just thought, look, I told one woman, I said, look, I can get. It wasn't the attorney, it was her assistant, and I was like, look, I can get laid whenever I want to. My bill is my bill. I'm not exchanging money for anything.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. How's the audio?
Amazing. All good.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. It seems like I've got to stop the app and then restart it. So apologies.
Yeah, I guess. No
But
worries.
yeah, so like bail bond stuff, man. Another funny one we had to go out of state. We tracked the person down. They were
Mhm.
they were in another state. So what we did was we tracked them down. Like I tracked them down electronically first. So using social media, open source intelligence things. And so I hired instead of going up there and waiting, I hired a private investigator. Well, the bondsman hired a private investigator in that state and said, look, we need you to put eyes on this person. If you put eyes on them, physically put eyes on them, then we'll go up there and we'll collect them. And so the private eye sends me a picture of a topless woman at a pool. And he was like, is this the subject? And I was like, yes, it is. And so she's very, again, another attractive woman. And so people look at attractive women and think that they're, these innocent flowers. She stabbed her boyfriend in his sleep, stabbed her boyfriend while he was sleeping, and tried to cut off. It didn't cut it off, but cut his thing, but tried to cut it off. And so when he woke up, she was trying to cut his junk. He wakes up, pushes her, she stabs him in the chest. And so she was out on bond and she didn't show up on bond. And so I was like, yep, that's our subject. And it's a very attractive woman, like very attractive, like the trophy wife look, like some guys like the fake boobs, the hair, everything else. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
and so she was hanging out with, what made it dicey was that she was hanging out with a suspected drug lord. And so that changes the dynamics. We can't just kick in the door if this is a drug lord's house, obviously. Yeah, obviously. And so, so we had to do things a little bit differently. And so I knew a guy with Baltimore, um, with Maryland State Police. He worked in Baltimore, and I
Mhm.
was like, "Look, how do we get around this?" And he was like, "Well," he said, "if you've got," so we had the PI take a picture of the guy as well too. He was like, "We're looking for him." He said, "So we'll pick him up if you guys want to pick up the girl right after that." And so we had to coordinate everything with them. But, I was like, this guy's a drug lord." And I was like, "Yeah, we're not kicking in that door." Because look, it's maybe you survive that initial encounter, but then there are going to be
Yeah.
consequences you have to deal with afterwards that nobody wants to deal with. So we wound up picking her up. This is right after the guy gets arrested, and she was in custody briefly. As soon as they cut her loose, we were waiting for her outside the police station, and so we handcuff her, and so we're going to drive her back because the bondsman was like, look, that was a $350,000 bond. And so the bondsman was going to lose 350 grand. So he was like, yeah, I want her back here. And normally what you can do is you can have them transported, but then it takes time, and he was working with a time limit. So you've got a time limit. So if you don't produce them within a certain amount of time, you can only recover 90% of your money. Then it keeps going down the more
So you break
time
even.
until nothing. You even if after about, I think it's was it a year and a half, if you don't, and don't quote me with the time, because I don't write bonds, I just collect their skips, but if you don't produce them after a certain amount of time, you don't get any money back, so you lose it forever. And so he was on a time crunch. He had already gotten down to 90%. I mean, so he didn't want to lose any more money, and so he's like, all right, drive her down. And so we're driving from Maryland down to Florida. And so what we did was, before we picked her up, we took a nap, got hydrated or whatever. So we were going to drive straight down. And so the whole time we're driving, this woman is offering everything, man. She's like, "Oh, look at my phone. I'll hook you up with my girlfriends. I'll hook you up with this girlfriend, that girlfriend." I'm saying, and the whole time she's offering what? Sex. Sex seems to be the
Yeah.
fallback for everything, man. And it almost never fails. And so
Yeah, because it's it's
it's
it's a magic. Yeah, it's a golden pussy. It's everything. It's sex and money. If you don't have money, then basically it's a party sex. If you're a guy, I mean, you'd rather basically have money because your sex ain't gonna party much.
yeah, yeah,
That's the reality.
yeah. Look, there's very few. Like, I know a guy now who women actually pay him to have sex with them. Now,
You got a big junk.
I won't go into too many details, but I've known the guy for years. He used to, let's just say, he used to be in the adult film industry,
Okay.
and so he's got an elephant trunk for a junk. You know what I mean? Apparently, and so, but will women pay him for sex? People don't realize that, like, there's women who pay for sex. Quite a few, but you just don't hear too much about it. But there are women out there who will pay a guy for sex, and he'll tell stories about women. Tell me stories about women who've bought him cars. Um, I'm sitting there like, damn, dude, you must have the magic bullet. You know what I mean? But these women have
It's a
seen.
golden dick.
Look, man, sex is, people think that only men think about sex. I think women think about it more than men do, because they do such crazy stuff. Like, I was dating a woman a while back. She was a senior in college, and so it
Mhm.
was out of my local area. So I would go drive up and visit her, and so I wound up banging her a few times in her dorm, right? And she would always insist on being in her dorm instead of going to a hotel. And so I'd be like, okay, whatever, right? Well, what I found out years later was her and her friends set up cameras and videotaped me. Didn't tell me about it. Now, if I do the same thing, I'm going to prison. They did it, and so I'm still trying to see if I can get a hold of the tape. You know what I mean? Just to see, because I was like, hey, look, I don't have anything to be ashamed of. Like, I actually had somebody try to blackmail me one time with
Mhm.
a woman who videotaped me again without knowledge, and they actually tried to blackmail me, and they showed me the video, and I was like, look, I said, okay, let's see. I said, okay, here's what I see. I see a man in his late 40s who's jacked and in shape. I said, with a Johnson hard enough to cut diamonds, banging the stuffing out of a 21-year-old chick for an hour plus. I said, send that to whoever you want. I said, I don't have any shame. I said, I'm not ashamed of anything on that video. You send it to whoever you want. I said, good luck with the blackmail, dude. And literally, they looked at me like I was crazy. I was like, yo, send it. I said, send it. Go for it. I dare you. I said, dare you. You're not going to embarrass me. I was like,
It was not the blackmail. It was a black bail.
yeah, right. And so I was like, but so much of that still happens, man. There's so much that still happens. So many people, so many women use sex. Women will use sex to hook up with guys to get things they want, and if they can't get the things they want, we're dealing with a thing, that's coming to a close where a guy hooked up with a woman, married guy. She blackmailed him out of money, and she's done with. Maybe I'll tell the story one day. She's blackmailed a bunch of other guys.
But the question I have is, you were talking about earlier as a consent form, right? We were talking here about the blackmail. But really, the people that are at risk with those are the people with means, right? Because why are you going to blackmail a guy with no means for? Can you confirm that?
Yes, yes, 100%. But here's the thing. you don't know when you're going to be a man of means. And so you might hook up with a woman now, you know what I'm saying, where you don't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw out of, right? You know, like when I first got divorced, I left the divorce with nothing, man. I had to start from zero. You know what I mean? And that's just how it is typically when you get divorced, right? And so, but say you start here, but then you wind up balling, right? You wind up making money. You hit your
Yeah.
stride. You're successful. You're making money. Women will go back in time, and remember, they save. I try to tell guys this: they save everything. Every text message they'll download to their online storage, their cloud storage. And if they see later on that some dude that they had a bunch of risky sex with or whatever, the S&M stuff or whatever, and they see that all of a sudden he signed a contract with a football team or a baseball team here or whatever it is, and he's got millions of dollars, you can count on at some point. Like we had a famous case here with a baseball player where a woman said that, oh, he did this to me. I don't remember the guy's name, but there's a famous baseball player case where it wound up ruining his career. The woman accused him of abusing her during sex. And it took a while, but what came out on the text messages was it was a setup. She did it to get money. And so she actually
No, of
requested,
course.
yeah, she requested the things that he did. And so what I tell guys is like, okay, don't collect that documentation based on where you are now. If you're a guy of strong character who has ambition, who wants to move forward, you know what I mean, and
Yeah.
has a plan for his future, like a man like yourself, you know what I mean, then guess what? At some point, you're gonna become that high value target that they're gonna try to extract money from later on.
Well, I'm fucked.
Look, look, my friend, if you need my services, you know where to reach me. If you need my help.
Guys, don't share that video. I want to stay on, all right?
But look, but like with like the videos they took of me, I don't even know how many videos they took of me. I probably had sex with this woman maybe 50, 60 times. And they're making videos. And I'm sitting there like, damn, if I did the same thing with my buddies and I did that, I'd be going to prison right now. If girls do it, they're not held responsible the same way men are. They just aren't. And so
Going back to our common friend, I mean, I've never met him, right? But why do you think CGA goes to fucking the JUCO? He's got a lot to lose now. He's got a lot to lose. Imagine before you fuck a girl, you have to basically bring on an NDA. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's not like now you're gonna. I mean, I'm not even sure if they have like even like an app or like a software company, right? You have DocuSign here. If you want to basically sign a document online, like for example, you want to sell a sales contract for a software company, we used to have DocuSign. You put like you just like DocuSign it, done. Happy days, right? But it's like now you almost have like some type of app where it's like sex sign. It kills all of the flow, right? As you say, it's like now it's
yeah,
pure transactionalism
yeah, and
because
and
you have
then
to cover your ass.
it does kill it. And this is one of the things with the hashtag believe all women. You shouldn't just believe all women. You should believe the evidence. Trust the evidence, because I've worked on a bunch of false accusation cases and women will lie. Now they've got a bunch of different reasons to lie, but they will lie. I'm not saying every person who has been a victim of that is lying. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that there are more false accusations than we have been led to believe. Because most of them, here's what happens with the cases. Once I've collected evidence and the attorney has done their attorney magic, cases get dropped. But they don't charge the women. Women never get charged for falling. Sometimes they do, but for the most part, they don't get charged for filing a false charge, a false witness against someone. And so, how many guys have gone to prison because they couldn't afford an attorney?
Exactly.
And so if you have a public defender here in the United States of America, you might as well just go ahead and throw yourself in front of a train. You're screwed. They're gonna talk you into accepting a deal. It's only you're only going to get 75 years. You'll still be able to live your life when you get out. No, man, they're the worst option you can have, and they're not going to help you get free. They're going to help you. They're going to help the district attorney or the prosecutor get a favorable judgment against you. And so, I just tell guys, look, man, look at where you might be in the future. They're not doing these false accusation cases against. Sometimes it's against guys who don't have a lot of money, but that's typically a woman in a relationship or a married woman who is using a false accusation charge to cover up infidelity. So their husband finds out they had sex with another dude. Oh no, he forced himself on me. That's happened a bunch of times as well. And so, yeah, it does take the romance out of it. I agree.
Actually, I've got a question. I know that there are some hedge funds that will look into case of litigation case, right? And will literally bet on like an outcome. Obviously, it's from a business law perspective, right? So that they can take a cut of it because there's so much money involved that a lot of times they need some external backing for the whole procedure to follow through, right? Obviously criminal law I don't think has as much, it's not as expensive, well, not expensive is not the right word, but as money generating. But have you seen those situations where you have external backers backing someone that doesn't necessarily have the money when the evidence is there so that they can get some rewarding benefit on top of, in terms of compensation and shit? Okay.
Yes. Yes, quite a bit. I've done actually a lot of litigation cases. And so what happens is this. When you look at, and again, I'm not an attorney, I'm an investigator, but what happens is this. If you get an attorney, say you want to sue somebody, well, it's typically a battle of who has the most resources. So if you hire a small attorney from a small firm that doesn't have a lot of money to prosecute the case properly, that includes evidence, investigations, expert witnesses, whatever it is, depositions, everything costs money. Everything in the legal system costs
Yeah.
money. If you don't have enough money, then that more powerful, wealthier firm can twist the arm of your attorney and you and say, look, accept this settlement because this is the best you're going to get because we have more money, we can do this, we can do that. You can't afford to keep up. And so it's like an arms race. Now imagine like a small country like say Antigua or Cuba deciding they're going to compete against the United States of America in financial GDP. There's no comparison. And so what happens is there are entities and actually companies that will invest. Now they do a lot of due diligence. They'll invest in a particular cases and say, okay, we're going to bet that you're going to get this case done, but when it's done, this is what we want back in return. We want a cut. We want a percentage of whatever the favorable outcome is. Now, obviously, it's a gamble, but they've got it down to a science. And I actually know a couple of guys that are really good at predicting the outcome of cases, depending on the attorneys and the case and the facts of the case and the documented facts on the case, and they're really good at predicting the outcomes. And so what they'll do is they'll get hired by some of these firms and say, hey, what do you think, what are the odds of this being a favorable outcome? And he'll give them, write a report and give them a kind of a predictive report about what they think is going to happen. Yeah, that happens a lot because, well, lawsuits can be expensive, very expensive, especially if you're talking about going against insurance companies. Like I've been on a bunch of litigation cases against insurance companies. I have more than 100 actually, on from the civil side of things. And
Civil pays.
yes, well, civil cases. So you got civil cases, meaning I'm suing you for money, or criminal. And so the civil cases, I've seen settlements of hundreds of millions of dollars on separate cases. And the big difference between, the larger firms can typically get you a better outcome. Like I actually have done a bunch of casework with one of the top 3 litigators in the country. They're located in South Florida, actually. They're really, really good at what they do. And so, but they have the resources. And so they've got the resources, they've got the manpower, they've got it down to a science how to prosecute these cases. I remember there was one case in particular. It was against a hospital. Obviously, I won't go into any names or anything like that, but it was against a hospital. It was malpractice. They offered the family of the victim $500,000. They weren't happy with that settlement. They hired this firm. They offered him $2 million. He said, pretty much, screw you. Wind up getting $80 million out of that settlement. But he was able to do it because the other attorney was going to accept 500,000. Why? Because they're looking at their percentage, which is 33%, 40 if they go to trial. That's Florida anyway. And so, if you're a struggling attorney that doesn't have a lot, that 33% of $500,000, that's a lot for you. But
Yeah.
for this bigger firm, that's nothing for them.
So technically, so what you're saying to me is that you have entities that are just law firms that will just say, look, we'll just take a bigger cut, but we're going to guarantee, like, but we'll take a bigger cut because you cannot pay for us because also there's a higher prediction rate of whether or not you're going to win. That's why we're going to take you on. But because you can't afford us, you're going to still be, relatively speaking, you're going to be taking less, but absolutely speaking, you're going to take more. But it still remain within legal firms, taking on a bit like, and if they lose, it's a loss, complete loss, right? If they lose the case, it's a
Yeah,
complete loss.
yeah, and so the way it works here is like they can't get a cut of the victims, the plaintiffs piece, but they can get a cut of the attorney's cut by funding the lawsuit. So that 33,
Okay.
say that 33 or 40% if they go to trial. So the difference in that amount from a $500,000 settlement and a $40 million settlement, that's a huge difference. You go from a decent amount of money to a whole bunch of money.
And the question I have is, it's mostly civil cases, right?
Yes.
Those things.
Yeah. So yeah, the
Because
criminal
criminal
side.
cases.
Yeah, well, the criminal side is you can't really make money on the criminal side. Just the defense attorney makes money and his team makes money. The plaintiff, the defendant is just spending money to stay free, and so you're going against the state. So there's no real way for anybody to generate or earn anything from that particular outcome. So yeah, the civil side of things, there's a lot of money in these things, and look, it's all based on loss. And so if someone suffers a loss, they're entitled to sue for damages to replace those losses. And so
Which
if
is
someone,
after the criminal stuff.
yeah, typically, not always, but sometimes negligence, but a lot of times after the criminal stuff. Like a lot of the cases I've worked on from the civil side, most of them were homicides. And so if I own a shopping center and someone goes there and they get robbed, and I know there's a problem there, and they get robbed and hurt badly or killed, then they can sue. Now I have insurance, and so the battle is going to be between their attorney and the attorney, the law firm that my insurance company hires, to fight, to
Yeah.
fight the lawsuit. And so, and again, even then, it depends on how much insurance is available. So, like, say for instance, you got business liability insurance. The state of Florida requires that if I'm doing bodyguard work, especially, I have to have $1 million aggregate insurance. That means there's $1 million in that pot. So if somebody wants to sue me or a few people, they have to split up from that pot. And so if there's $1 million, that's the maximum they can get is $1 million. Now with some of these other business liability, you got Lloyd's of London and all the rest of these things, then you're talking about insurance in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And so when you're dealing with that much money, that's when you see the claws and the fangs and the ruthlessness come out. It's
Yeah.
definitely a grown up game. And these people are playing for keeps because there's so much money on the line.
Yeah. No, I get that. I get that. So yeah, basically, if you like, first, if you're in criminal case, find yourself in criminal case, get your ass out of jail, right? And if you manage to do that, just basically bring the ka-ching on the civil case.
Yeah.
And all right. And
Yeah, and
do you
if
find yourself?
go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, good.
I was gonna say
Do you find yourself?
if you need an attorney, what I tell people is get the best attorney you can get, because if it comes down to your freedom, don't try to cheap out,
Yeah.
because your
And
freedom's at risk.
the question I have is, did you find yourself like fighting against like federal courts or
I've
not?
I've
Never.
I've worked on a couple of federal cases.
Yeah.
The thing with the federal cases is this: the federal government has so much in their favor. You're not in a fair fight going against the federal government. That's where their conviction rate is so high, because what they'll do is, so I actually know a guy I grew up with. He wound up getting a federal case. He wound up doing 20 years in federal prison. He was
Mhm.
he was a drug distributor, and so
Okay.
he what the federal government will do once you wind up on their radar, they will let you continue to commit your crimes so they can gather more evidence against you, and they'll get you to the point where they'll actually get you to the point where you have no place to go. And so literally all you're doing is deciding what deal you want to accept or whether or not you want to go to trial. But they'll show you, look, here's what we have. Like this guy that I know, when he was this is how they got him to take a deal. They had 72 witnesses against him. 72. These were people that worked for him in different stages of his distribution. 72. Then he put different things in his family members' names. And so like a house in this aunt's name, a house in this
Ugh.
uncle's name, or store. What they said was as well too, if you go to court, we're gonna drag them in and arrest them and charge them as co-conspirators, including your son, your daughters, your wife, your girlfriends, your mom, your dad, your aunts, your uncles, your brother. And so they would have dragged everybody in. So he took a deal. And
But
that's typically what
that's what I
happens.
hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I hear. I hear like a lot of time federal cases is about like there's no trial. It's just like negotiation between lawyers, between lawyers from the
Yeah.
state and I mean the
Yeah.
state prosecutor and the lawyer.
Yeah, very few times do people actually very few people try to fight the government because most people lose. So if you look at, like, remember years ago, Bill Gates, Microsoft, they had an antitrust lawsuit, meaning they had a
Yeah,
monopoly.
I remember.
And so the richest man on earth at the time, who was worth $60 billion when that trial started, when it was done, even though, well, they had to give up some concessions, when it was done, he was worth 40. He lost that much money fighting the federal government of the United States of America. They've got an unlimited budget. They've got an unlimited amount of manpower. They can lie in federal court. They can set you up. They can entrap you, and the federal judges work with them, not with you.
Mhm.
And so you are
Yeah.
you are you are up against a mountain, and you've got a spoon to try to dig yourself out of. And so
So
that's why most people just cave in. And so the best you can do when you're facing federal charges is do what you can to mitigate the charges and try to lessen them as much as possible. But to get out of it, it's rare for people to beat the federal government.
question. Say going back to the Bell Bondsman, right? If you had to give, what would be the tips or the suggestion for people that may want to get into that business?
It depends on, look, for a long-term business, it's actually a decent business to get into. What you have to take into account is that it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. You're not going to make money very quickly owning a bail bonds company. So I don't own a bail bonds company. I get hired by bail bondsmen. My main thing is I'm a private investigator. I use my private eye skills to help the bail, to do the bail bonds thing. You need a license for that. In the state of Florida, it takes you 2 years to get the license. You have to be sponsored by someone. It differs from state to state, but it's not a bad business, but there are certainly less stressful businesses. It's a stressful business. Like if you own it, that's why I don't want to own it, because I've got so many other things to do. I can't worry about skips. Imagine having that money hanging over your head that if somebody doesn't show up to court, you could lose like a ton of money. Like I know a guy, he contacted us from out of state. He had an $800,000 bond. He wrote it on a foreign national, which is always, here on a tourist visa. But he wrote the bond, and he said, "Hell, the guy's in Florida." Well, he was in Florida before he jumped on a plane and went back to his home country. And so that actually put him out of business. He didn't have $800,000 to pay back the insurance company, and so he's done. Because he saw the $80,000 on the front end, but wasn't taking into account the risk on the back end. And so, I'd say for a lot of those guys, and like guys that do that stuff don't last very long. It's not a bad business to get into, but you have to be really, really street smart. You got to be really slick, and you can't be a soft-hearted person. So people will give you every type of sob story. This happened, that happened. My mother's in the hospital. My father's this. My this happened, that happened, and your reply has to be what my reply is. Sorry, I'm not here to judge your circumstances. I'm here to do a job. And so,
Mhm.
and for me, my reputation is more important to me than the cash or anything else. Just because people, look, there's people that may not like me. I'm sure there's plenty of people that don't like me because I'm a very opinionated person. I have a very strong personality, and if you try to push me around, I'm going to push you back. But here's what they can't say. They can't say I'm dishonest. They can't say that I'm trying to screw anybody over. Not while being honest, they can. They can lie and say that, but they can't say it and be honest while they're doing that. And with the bail bonds thing, I've had women, I've had other people try to pay me off and bribe me and everything else. And once I accept the job, I'm going to do the job. And so if you have that approach, and that doesn't mean you have to treat people poorly. I'm not abusive to people when I pick them up. I'm actually like, look, man, look, I get it, but you've got to pay this bill. You know what I mean? And but it's not for everybody. And so if you take the slow, steady approach, if you want to be a business owner, it's actually a decent business. But if you think you're going to make well, here's what you're not going to do. You're not going to get rich doing bail bonds unless you have multiple offices in different counties. Then you can actually really make some significant money. Like I know a guy now, he owns 4 bail bonds companies, and through that, he's been able to buy hotels, apartment buildings. Like the guy's balling money wise. Like he's paid. But that's not everybody. Most bail bondsmen have small companies and they make a good living.
All right. That's
Now there are professional bail bondsmen. They self-insure and underwrite their own bonds themselves, so they don't use insurance companies. Now, to do that, obviously you need a significant amount of money to underwrite that yourself. However, they keep all the money. They don't have to pay any fees, and they don't have to look over their shoulder for the insurance companies. So, but those are guys that'll typically work for very wealthy clients that want, very specific relationships with bail bondsman. Typically, you're looking guys on the high end of, say embezzlers, drug lords, other international criminals. They'll hire guys like that because the privacy, and they'll underwrite the bond completely. And so instead of paying 10%, you'll pay guys like that 100% of the bond. And if you wind up beating your case, they'll give you back 90% and keep 10%. But
sorry.
there's
Can you repeat that last bit? Can you repeat that last bit?
about the percentage.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
The
so
second bit.
what some people will do is they'll pay the bondsman 100% of the bond. That way, the insurance company, especially the higher bond amounts. And so you see some of these bonds, $5 million, $20 million. Nobody's doing that for 10% because the risk on the backside is just too much. And so they'll charge more. But what some of these professional bail bondsmen do, they'll underwrite the entire thing themselves, but they'll demand the whole thing from the client. They'll put it in an escrow account. And so if that client beats that charge, then the bondsman just keeps 10% and gives them back 90% of their money back. But that's on a whole different. There are very few of those in the state of Florida. There's less than a handful of them, just because nobody really has. Most people don't have that type of money to underwrite them themselves. However, if you can do that, then you can get a whole bunch of very, very wealthy and influential clients. And so you get to meet a lot of people from very different walks of life doing both the PI work, private investigative work, but also to the bail bonds work.
So if I get this right, so I'm sorry if I'm a bit slow today. Yeah? So let's say, for example, I'm a big money ambassador, and I was like, all right, cool. Well, there's a case against me. I want to be still remain free. I'm gonna go to one of those big bails bondman company where they underwrite their own bonds, and I've got a 10 million bail that I need to pay. Right. So I'll ask. Let's say you are that big bail bond company. I ask you, all right, cool. Can you pay the 10 million? And for me, if I attend court, I get 10. I get no. You get 10% of this, and if I don't, it's a loss. So what was that thing where you could get 100% of the money?
Well, see, the bail bondsman always has to be paid a certain amount, 10%. So the bail bondsman is
Okay,
going to keep that 10%. And
but
so
the hundred percent you mentioned
well,
you
yeah,
mentioned
yeah.
100%.
What they'll do with some of these guys with the really high bonds is they'll make them pay 100% of the bond. And so
Okay,
the benefit of that is that there's no kickback. So there have been cases where guys have paid 100% of the bond, and they didn't feel like facing court, so they jump on a private jet and they're gone. Well, guess what? The bondsman's not going to come after you because he's not going to have to pay any money. And so that's happened on different occasions for guys, but guys who are on that high end of things rarely get caught. But the benefit is that if they do decide to go to trial and they beat the case, and they get the bulk of their money back from the bill bondsman. Bondsman's happy, they're happy, and the government case against them, whether it got thrown out or whatever happened. But it's a whole different it's a whole different category of bail bonds just because it's no longer 10% only. Just because like I'll keep. So if I did that and it's a $10 million bond, I'm not going to put up my $10 million to get you out of prison. If you're an international criminal, because you could just hide somewhere because you've got connections everywhere, bank accounts everywhere. You can go wherever wherever you want, and I'd never find you. And being here in the States, once you're out of the United States of America, then I would need a court order from a judge here, plus a court order from the judge wherever you were, to be able to have permission to grab you and put you on a plane and take you back. But with the professional bail bondsman, if someone pays them 100% of the money, they're not chasing after these guys because they don't have to. If you're willing to, go ahead, sorry.
They put that in escrows, 100 million, once you agree on taking them.
Yeah,
So technically, if they leave, you get the 100 million. So it's like you're even.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay,
precisely.
no, that's what I want to clear. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's okay.
yeah, and so what some people will do that. So if it's $10 million, like I know of a case now where a guy got a huge bail. I won't say what state it was. He had a huge amount of bail, and the bail bonds, because bail bondsmen talk from state to state. There's like a big network of bail bondsmen, and so let's just put a number. Let's just say the bond was $5 million, and so the guy said, "Look, I can't bond him out. He's a foreign national. Looking at federal, it was a federal charge. Looking at federal charges." Federal and immigration charges, because whenever you're foreign national, it's immigration and federal, and so it's federal. Immigration is federal charge, and so, but also too, he was a drug trafficker, part of a cartel, let's just say, an international cartel. Won't say what country, but so the bond was, what is it? Was it $5-10 million? So let's say $5 million, right? And so the guy's brother calls the bail bondsman. And this is one of those professional bail bondsmen. And he said, "Look, I just can't do it." He said, "Here's what I'm willing to do." He said that if you bring in $5 million in cash, I will bond your brother out tomorrow. And the guy and two of his associates, showed up with duffel bags. That actually does happen. Duffel bags of cash. Him and his secretary counted the cash, and they signed the paperwork. He stayed there with it overnight, deposited it, and then the next day went and bonded him out. And within probably an hour, the guy was in a private jet out of the country. And so they lose that money, but for them, it's worth the loss, because he's a drug lord. $5 million to get out of prison and get his brother out of prison and back making money. They probably make more than $5 million in a month.
And if the math is right, then technically the bail bondsman didn't lose any money, but didn't make any money.
No. He made money, because once you flee the country, you forfeit that money.
He made the 5 million, but didn't have to put the 5 million to like. Didn't he have to put the 5 million
Well,
to the court?
okay, so the bondsman makes 10%. The county gets the
Okay,
rest
so
of the money.
technically he paid them. He paid
Yeah.
5.5 million basically. That's what. Okay,
Yeah.
no, sorry. So then they technically made
Yeah.
a half a million. All right.
Yeah. So the court gets their money. The bondsman keeps the money they make, and everybody's happy. Well, the government's not happy because they lost a guy they wanted to produce in court. But everybody else is happy. The bondsman made money. He didn't lose money. He's, his international feud, but the money was all paid up, so nobody loses. So the insurance company is not going to take any money out of his pocket. The insurance company is happy because they got their money back. They didn't lose money. The bondsman is happy because he made money. The drug lord is happy because he's free. So everybody wins except the
But
federal government.
technically, it's almost like the bail bondsman is almost an accomplice to escape as a middleman.
Well, technically. Well, look, I'm sure he didn't do that on purpose. He didn't know the guy was going to flee, but I'm sure that was their plan. That was their plan to, like, look, let's get you out of jail and then get you out of the country. Once you're out of the country, it's a lot more.
And technically, it's the government's mistake because you should not even post bail. There's no bail allowed. Done. Sorted.
Well, they have guidelines where they have to allow bail under certain circumstances. And so,
okay.
I think, and even if a person's a flight risk, they say, okay, I'm going to post bond at $5 million. And the bond is supposed to be such a high amount that you don't want to flee because you don't want to lose the money. But for when you talk about drug lords, now I don't think they understood how big of a drug lord this guy was. $5 million. The guy shows up with cash in hand. and pays the bondsman, and the bondsman, like, he tells me a story. I said, dude, what'd you do with all that cash? He said, dude, me. He said, I had two of my other bondsmen that pick people up. We're all here armed to the teeth, spent the night here playing cards, guarding the money. The next day, I called a deputy friend of mine that had him follow me to the bank to deposit everything. The insurance company gets their money as their collateral. The rest goes in his business account. And then they found out later on that the guy fled they didn't find out he fled the country until later on. He said it looks like he jumped on a jet with like an hour and a half after we got him out, after he got it released. And so when he gets out, there were people waiting for him. They take him in the car, take him to the private airport, gets on the jet, bam, gone. So for them,
So
it's worth it.
no, yeah, no, definitely worth it. No, it's interesting. I'm just thinking. I had a question, but I forgot what it was. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, one
quite.
funny.
Yeah, go on, go on.
No, I was gonna one funny thing I knew from like when I lived in LA. I used to play basketball all the time, to stay in shape. And the
Yeah,
best basketball games were in the hood. Like unless you want to play with a bunch of attorneys and accountants, with their knee braces and everything. You actually want to get a good game, you had to go to
yeah.
the hood. And so I used to play near there was a place near Highland. Well, actually no, not Highland. It was near Vine, close to the Vine and Sunset. There was a basketball court. You'd get some gangbangers there, and there'd be some drug dealers or whatever else, but it was a good game. Every now and then, you had to duck and take cover because someone was doing a drive by. Every now and then, it's
Yeah.
Los Angeles, but it's Los Angeles. You know what I mean? That happens.
And
So
Nipsey Hussle, right?
all Los Angeles is like you can't wear sports attire because if you wear the wrong hat, the wrong sports team, and some gang either claims that sports team or they're enemies of that particular gang that claims that sports team, you can get beaten, robbed, or shot. And so there was a Mexican dude. He was Mexican American, but he would play basketball with us. Tall dude, man. Guy was like 6'7". You know what I mean? But he told us a story about he'd been arrested a couple of times, but he would transport drugs for a cartel across the border because he's American, but he speaks Spanish and he's got Mexican roots. And so he said one day he got pulled over by CHP, California Highway Patrol. They had a dog. They knew he had drugs, and so he had 8 kilos of heroin in his car. And so we were like, oh man, so what happened, dude? He said, look, we can take all your the cops told him we can take all your drugs and let you go, or we can take 7 out of these 8 kilos and you're still going away for 15 years. And he said, have a nice day. And so they took his drugs. And what cops would do, that's back then, I don't know if they still do, I'm sure they still do, but cops in LA would have a network where they'd have cops that would steal drugs from drug dealers and then have their own drug dealers sell them in protected neighborhoods patrolled by their cops, and they had their own distribution network. And so we're talking to this dude. We're like, damn, dude. So they just took your drugs, and what'd you do? Because drug dealers want their money. They don't care if you got robbed.
Yeah.
They don't care if you get arrested. They want their money. He's like, I had to work it off, man. He said they let me work it off. He said it took me a couple of years to work it off, but I had to work it off and pay them back. And I was like, holy smokes, man. But that's a lot. Yeah, Los Angeles is a different country, like I said, man. It's a whole different world by itself, man.
I lived in California. I was in the Bay. I was in the Bay Area, not in LA. But sounds
Yeah,
like quite
LA.
quite the setup.
Well, look, I got to see a lot of weird stuff just because I got hired by one of the adult film studios to protect a couple of the people on a couple of occasions. So I put a video about one of the guys that a husband wanted to murder this guy, and so he would do street pickups on the streets in Hollywood Boulevard, and would meet just regular
Like pickup
everyday women.
artist.
Well, no, not pickup artists. He would pick them up for the purpose of inviting them to his studio to shoot a porn scene. And these are women that he just
Oh,
meet on the street, and he would do the same day, like literally. And like I've actually seen him doing it more than one occasion. He would meet women, and in 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, would convince them to go back to the studio with him and shoot a scene with him. And these
sounds
weren't
like a
like,
bank boss.
yeah, yeah, pretty much. And like these weren't prostitutes. Like these weren't street people. These were women who had jobs and everything else, and he would pay them $500-$600. He'd shoot a scene with them, and the only reason I was with him because like when I was guarding him, they hired me because apparently he produced a lot of content for them, and the husband actually tried to shoot him, but he was on the run. The cops hadn't got him. They're like, look, we want you to keep him safe until the police arrest the guy. And so, so I spent a lot of time talking to him. He's like, yeah. I said, so what happened, man? And he told me what happened. I was like, there's no way you pick up women on the street like that. I didn't believe it to shoot a porn video. He said, no, I'm serious. So he said, okay. I didn't live too far away from Hollywood Boulevard. I lived near a place called Griffith Park. And so he was like, look, I'll let you know next time I'm going out and you'll see for yourself. The first time I was walking down Hollywood Boulevard with him. We saw a woman. She was probably a 7, 6.5, 7, good looking woman. Like I would have gone out with her. And he talked
You
to
would
her
have
for a
hit.
little while. Like this, she was good looking chick, man. Great body, nice looks. Like she wasn't a 10 or nothing like that, but she was good looking and attractive. And he talked her into going back to his studio. And he took her back to his studio. And then later on, he called me. He's like, "Yeah, we shot a scene." And so what he does is would do is sell that scene, did it, then sell the raw footage to this particular studio. And so I wound up working for him. Learned a lot about female nature, just watching him be able to pick up women, ordinary, everyday women, and shoot adult film scenes with them, raw, no protective equipment, nothing, and just shoot a scene with strangers. And I was like, holy smokes, man. And then I actually wound up doing some work for a female actress. Obviously, I can't go into names, but she was very, very popular. And then she wound up getting stalked. And then someone actually tried to break into her place. And they're like, all right, Russ, we need you to, make sure nobody breaks into her place and does whatever or harms her. And so I wound up working for her for about a month, man. And I learned even more about female nature watching her and her friends and how they interacted with
Mhm.
everybody else, man. It's like you said something at the beginning of this podcast about how street women, prostitutes or whatever are a lot more honest. If prostitutes are honest, women who do adult film are even more honest. They don't lie about anything. They don't try to sugarcoat anything. They are brutally honest. And I saw how they dealt with guys and how guys dealt with them. And women who are not involved in that industry tend to hide a lot about their past. These women, there's nothing to hide. Everything's out there on film. Everything's there, documented in graphic detail. Everything they've done is right there in front of you. And so what are they going to hide? So they were brutally honest. They would tell me about how guys would just give them money, just offer them money. And I was like, what, for sex? No, just give them money. And then wealthy guys would pay them to fly in and do things for them and whatever else. And like the dominatrixes, I got to meet quite a few dominatrix women, and just the stuff they learned and would talk about men. Like I had a next door neighbor, big Nordic looking chick. She was 6'1", like those brutally pretty looking women. You know what I mean? Like very pretty technically, but very business like. Like she was almost like a robot. She would make $10,000, $15,000 a night
Nice.
working for and abusing. This is abusing wealthy, powerful dudes that would pay to be humiliated.
I have a question. On the one that was like the porn star girl that you had to watch over for the past 30 days. What would be Do you remember any type of anecdotes or anything about it that worth sharing?
She would just tell me that, look, most guys are at an extreme disadvantage when it comes to women. She said most men are at a disadvantage. She said girls learn how to manipulate men from a very early age. Some men learn game early in life. Most don't learn game at all. She said, but what most guys don't understand, and this is what I actually know some local women that were in the porn industry here as well too. I know quite a few escorts just because they're witnesses on cases I've worked on. You know what I mean? And so, but some of them become friends. I get to know a lot of them,
Yeah,
and so well, you learn a lot from them. You can learn a lot from them, man. And so what they all say is this: that men don't seem to understand that there is, like, pussy is not valuable. That it's the perception of it. She said, but they say it's not valuable. It's just how you sell it and how you market it. She said, but there's more pussy. Like pussy's easy to get for some guys and difficult to get for other guys. And so I was like, okay, so what's the difference? And so the difference is that the guys who get it easily don't hold it up on a pedestal or value it so highly. They look at it as this. It's just a resource. It's like going to the store and buying a box of pencils. Whereas the guys who find it more difficult to get, and women understand, they're like animals. They can smell your fear. And so they can tell a guy who's a player and who gets a lot of girls, just like you and I can identify women who have been around a bunch, they can identify
Yeah.
guys who get a bunch and guys who don't get a bunch. And so those are the guys who are paying a premium and getting used and abused by chicks on a regular basis because they think, they sniff a piece of booty and they're ready to go in their shorts. Whereas other guys will, can take him or leave him. Those are the guys they want to give everything to. And she was like, there are some guys that I've gone out with that they have access to every bit of me. And there are other guys I've gone out with, they might get some every now and it all depends on their approach. And so, I try to tell guys, and nobody listens. I said, look, the nicer you treat women, and you know this because you've done sales before. One of the things, and I've done sales before too. And so one of the things one of my sales trainers taught me, he had a saying. He said, treat them like shit, you'll be a hit. He said, the nicer you are, the less you're going to get, and you're not going to get any sales. And it seems to be the same with women. Like I said, how many guys do you know? How many women do you know that will say that their ex-boyfriend was an asshole? He was this, that, the other thing. He was mean. He was rude. He was disrespectful. He did this, that, whatever. And you ask them, well, how long were you dating him? 15 years. Okay, there you go. Women will
Hey man,
leave good guys for
asshole
bad guys.
asshole is a pre-selection behavioral trait. If a guy is an asshole, then most likely is because he could get away with it. If he could get away with it, that means he has options. If he has options, that means he's valuable. That's it. And it's not necessarily that they're actually that aware of it. It's almost like, that thing. And at the end of the day, there are status whores. There are, they can be money whores, but they want the best, right? And I mean, like, it's like a girl want to be the best option. No, a girl doesn't want to be the best option of the guy, but the guy wants the girl to be his best option. That's where the market failure comes in. So you as a guy, basically, technically, what game is, as a woman we've been, trying to market and, and sell pussy at a premium, you as a guy have to basically, part of game, show that pussy is a commodity, not the scarce resource that, that the woman is trying to make you believe it is. So whenever a girl makes you wait, what does that tell you? That doesn't tell you she's a good girl. That tells you you're a good guy that won't get to see the bad girl. It's like you have to understand that. But anyway, I mean, I think that's I think great thing to wrap up the podcast. I think it was a great podcast. Thanks again, Russ, for
And
having come in
well,
on the
you know what?
podcast. Yeah,
Thanks for having me on, man. It's always a pleasure speaking with you, my friend. I would say anybody who's not subscribed to you should be subscribed to you because you put out gold on a daily basis, man. Every single day. Very thoughtful individual. It's rare to find someone who's intellectual, as you are, clearly, but also an individual you could sit down and have a beer with at the same time. Most intellectuals have their nose in the sky and don't want to talk to anybody. You're an intellectual, and I could actually see sitting down and having a pint of Guinness with you. You know what I mean? And
don't bring Guinness because the last time I got Guinness, I got drunk singing karaoke song on Sugar Babes Round Round, and my friend.
look, you know what? You say that. I actually won a karaoke contest at a British
Okay,
club, singing Michelle by the Beatles. No lie.
all right.
And like when I stood there, literally they were like, "What's this fucking yank singing the Beatles?" Then when I was done, some of the chicks were crying. I was like, "Yes, motherfucker, there you go."
There you go, fucking Miles Davis, but like turn British, it's like, or Ray Charles. Like, no, unfortunately with me it was awful. So I completely tone deaf. But thankfully, autotune is there to save the day, so I can rap
There
in
you go.
French. But anyway,
There you go, brother.
any closing thoughts or anything that you'd like to share before I close the podcast?
You know what? I'm going to be making an announcement soon. I've made some business changes that's going to allow me to do more of the electronic and the electronic trail research I do for guys, background checks, a lot more rapidly and efficiently. And so I'm going to announce that I'm going to be doing what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a price reduction for people who listen to French OG podcast. If you mention that you saw this podcast, instead of for the online research, which is typically $750, you'll be able to do it for $500.
There you go. You'll have to they just have to basically say French OG on the thing
French
so that
OG
people
sent
know
me.
this.
Say French OG sent me.
There you go.
And the website is coming soon. I got the URL for privateeruss.com. So if you need to email me, you can email me at russ@privateeruss.com.
By the way, just for disclaimer purposes, I don't get anything. I mean, that can change, hopefully. Who knows?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we'll
Well, anyway,
we'll talk later, my friend.
all right. Anyway, I didn't expect this, by the way. He just throw it out. Thanks. And by the way, I also want to say it's always a fucking pleasure reading, Private Eye Russ breakdown of the stories and the case he has. He posts on Twitter. It's really insightful, right? You can listen to me and tell you exactly, very short and succinctly, what it is. Here is basically the illustration of what I'm saying, but two different approach. Choose which one we prefer. And on this, guys, thank you for having followed us so far, and wish you a good day.
Peace, brother.